Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to open the workshop that we scheduled for 5:30 to 6:30. It's actually going to be 5:30 to 6 due to scheduling for the agenda that we have. And because of the timetable, what I thought we could focus, if it's all right with the select board members, is just to focus on filling the slot per the policy and bylaws of the select board. And it's a little different than what we talked about. First of all, we acknowledge your stepping down from the budget committee because Chris was elected to the select board. And on a side note, to what I can find looking at annual reports, talking to the past town managers, Chris is the first town employee to be elected to the select board, which is kind of historic. I think it speaks volume for his character and respect that they have in the community. I think it's pretty cool besides. So with that in mind, in the past, the select board has appointed people. I know Bob Jones was an example who was appointed on a regular basis because of the vacancies and when people stepped down. But as you look at the actual language, the committee, the budget committee, let's see where I marked it. It's at towards the end, 25, I believe, reappointments. And it says under the reappointment section for the protocol, members appointed to complete a vacant term shall serve for the date appointed and sworn in for the term of expiration. That was the confusion when I thought that we'd be filling in for 2 years as opposed to 1. That starts it. And then if you move down to how, it talks about the committee under D. Well, first of all, we have to go through the process, which is to accept the resignation due to his election, and then we'll be posting it for a 30-day notice. Anyone who's interested in filling that position on the Budget Finance Committee will present their resume or their letter to actually the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee, or if it was the Planning Board, the Planning Board, or Appeals, would then look at them and make a recommendation to the Select Board. And then at that stage, we would decide who, if we didn't agree, or we just accept it. And it's about a 60, 90-day process all in all. But it's kind of appropriate that the committees would decide, after looking at it, who would fit in. I was under the impression the first time through that the Select Board would do what we've done in the past. But I think this is a way to follow it. So if anyone has any questions on that. But it's quite a period to go from one thing to another. And the only thing I would say on this particular process would be, is it my hair? What gave it away? The only thing I would consider is shortening the time period because it actually ends up being 90 days or 120 if there's any glitch. And we don't have to deal with that tonight. It's just a matter of realizing the process and asking if anyone has any questions on the process as I read it, because it makes a point of saying to the board or committee. And if it was just the select board, it wouldn't say or committee. That's my interpretation.
I agree with that.
So as far as this one particular thing, I think that the town manager talked, or Mel talked about posting it or having it ready to go for tonight or tomorrow, so it makes the paper, the 30 days.
Yeah, I think we can post that in Roadrunner. I think it's this Friday.
Well, they asked for it to be on Tuesday.
Immediately, okay.
And then depending on where else we want it advertised, we can get that in motion, yeah.
Get on the signboard and
Once it hits our webpage, it's covered, and then the paper, even if we miss this Friday, we'll have it for the next Friday. And it's still quite a length of time for anyone who wants to put a letter in. And now that we've mentioned it at 2 different select board meetings,
right.
Anyone who's paying attention will have a letter in. Any questions? Any other change that anyone here looked at that on this particular matter? I thought this was important to get out of the way now to
Yeah.
lay it out.
I agree.
I agree.
So first of all, we got to go through B.
Yes. For the, we accepted, oh, we have to vote. Maybe there should be a motion then.
I don't know about a motion,
No, I
we
don't.
just have to
Well,
accept it.
we would do this on our meeting,
Yeah, current select board.
True,
right? Like,
true.
in our meeting
Yeah.
following,
The
right?
only hiccup I can see is the August 20th Budget Finance Committee meeting is actually a tour of public safety. So they won't be meeting, it won't be a regular meeting for them. So I guess that would put us to September if they were to meet.
Do you think they'd be willing to explore a
I'll
special meeting?
I'll talk with the chair,
Or a
Lockwood,
quick
just,
meeting before their tour?
maybe we can do that. Yep, so I'll make a note of that and I'll talk with chair.
Well, I mean, that was the workshop part of this, and again, if we want to talk about, do we want to shorten it, this would be the time, because we're going to come back and visit it, but at least it would be publicly acknowledging in a workshop that is 90 days reasonable? And the other thing, and the second thing, is my interpretation of the expired term under 25(1). To be appointed to complete a vacancy term shall serve the date appointed and sworn in at the term expiration. I mean, do we want to clarify that it's just until the next general election, as they have done in the past?
I think so.
So we'll make a note of that, and then and why I'm asking about it now is because we're speaking on this particular item.
Right.
And then we can go back and whatever time we have to
Tweak other things.
other things we
Right.
can. So those are the two things that I saw. Kayla, did you see anything?
I know that Sam mentioned something that you saw in the bylaws that you'd like to address.
Section 6, attendance.
On this appointment?
Oh, on that
reappointments,
appointment
yeah.
thing? No, I agree with what
Okay.
you're doing.
I know 90 days seems like a long time, but I think shortening it really isn't that fair, because 30 days is a typical length of time you give people to see a notice, respond to a notice. So I know that adds up to 90 days, but
And, let me ask you this. If someone stepped down in May, and the reason I said shorten it, and now we go 90 days, there's 4 people on the board, tie votes could be a problem. Should we put a clause in there and say within a period, 90 days before the June election, that we could appoint someone? All I'm thinking about is, this is when we're busy. This is the budget period,
Yeah.
May, June. I mean, everything comes to a head. I think we have to look at that. If we leave the 90 days, there should be an exception for a time period that's less than 90 days. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
All right. And we don't have to decide tonight.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out when I was tossing and turning around with, I said, wait a minute, I didn't realize this went to the committees. So let's just give that some thought of how we would fill in an expedient way. It could be as simple as the next highest vote getter. If 2 people ran for office and someone stepped down, there was 1 position, I mean, we can play with it. It's just something I think we ought to consider so we don't find ourselves in May, someone steps down, moves away, or Lord forbid, is incapacitated,
So would we give that like a time frame? Just throwing an idea, like between the months of, or would we just state during active budget fiscal, or during active fiscal budget time?
Well,
We would try to appoint on a more expedited process. I'm thinking
I'm
out
willing to
loud.
make a note and then bring back the conversation, because we're going to be, there's a few things in here we're going to have to go through. There isn't just this one thing. For example, if you look at the policy, I'll just give this example. It says 10 working days or 12 working days per agenda, and we work 4 days a week, the staff. So that's 8 days. That's 2 weeks. We'd be having an agenda by this policy. We'd be getting an agenda 2.5 weeks out, unless we say a working week shall be Friday to Friday, or Tuesday to Tuesday, and just make it a simple week for the agenda, because as it is, when we try to get this agenda out early, Monday was, they're off, and Friday was 4th of July. And so the first thing I realized is that we needed to go back and look at that long period for the agenda. You got to remember, they went from 2 meetings to 1.
You could also just strike the word working.
Did you already go back?
Yeah, sorry.
13. I was giving an example. I wasn't. And then we'll start from the beginning. But that's just an example of what I was talking about. That might be some creative way to do it. 7 days does Tuesday to Tuesday,
Yep.
which is what we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That was simple. See what I mean? That's what meeting of the minds. Of course, I should have had a pencil with me.
Yeah, I think that works.
Anyway, if you want to start from the beginning, we can do that. Sam, if you have something you'd like to highlight, because I don't want to run past the 6 o'clock period. I would like to accommodate the people that are scheduled to come in.
Well, I'll just bring up a quick one on Section 6, attendance. It said
Oh, yes.
attendance will be defined as present physically, no written or electronic means, blah, 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 blah. I assume that includes Zoom. And we do Zoom very often. People are out sick, they're out of town on business, and they Zoom in, and that, to me, is attendance.
Yeah, and you see, I highlighted it too. And that's almost the first one I highlighted, actually. So we have to figure a way, when possible, when practical. I mean, I said to Derek, if you feel up to it, I should have announced that too. Derek Ray has had a fever for a few days, and he's just not focused. He said, if I feel better, I said, if you feel better, Zoom in. If you don't, it's hard to think when you're sick, rationally and stuff. So he did call, and that's why he's not here.
Maybe you change that to with permission of the chair. In other words, you can
That's-
zoom in,
Yes.
in like in Derek's case,
Yeah,
he's sick,
Yeah.
and you say, hey, you're sick, stay home, we don't want you to get everybody else sick, but we'll allow you to zoom in. It makes sense.
Yeah, and
But
actually
he needs
says,
to have communication with the chair or vice chair.
good point, Chris. And it actually says that in the beginning. It says without notification of the chair. So that covers
Yeah,
you
that
when you,
covers-
you know. But still, it's better to clarify it right now and work through it so that if we're going to try to follow policies and tweak them so that it actually is understandable and we don't have a 45-minute conversation on whether it's 2 years or 1 year, it'll make the meetings a lot quicker.
I noticed that these are also last updated pre-COVID,
Yes.
so
Yeah, I went
think
back to the-
addressing and adding Zoom as a attendance is would be an okay thing.
And it's an interesting thing. I know the town hall has the annual reports. If you see when they're amended, and you go back to the warrants in the annual reports, it's quite interesting reading to what they changed. And that's what I did with the Budget Committee and this, to see why it was changed. And so I think you're covered with, health issues and stuff, especially after your back operation.
Yeah.
And thank you for pointing that out. It's interesting, when you start with the first paragraph, I just want to touch on this, all right? Let us get through it, Cliff. If you got something to say, I'll have you talk, though, unless you want to say something right away on
I'd like
that.
to say something.
On the Budget Committee, go ahead.
No, on the Budget Committee on this.
All right.
I printed the agenda for this last week. This was not in the workshop at that time.
Oh, the draft?
Yeah, I printed it and it said, workshops will be Raymond Community Residents Partnership and discussion on community events.
That's the agenda for today's agenda. The workshop we announced last month.
This says workshops for those two items, so I've got it now.
This is at 5:30 we're doing this, at 6 o'clock we're starting.
We've only got 30 minutes for this, so I'd just soon stay on what we're doing. But Cliff, I did the same thing. I had to look at both of
Now,
them. One got posted and maybe in a timely
Yeah, I think
manner.
it was
But just to be fair, we're trying to work through with moving it from Friday to Tuesday to before, and we had a holiday and a day off. Peter?
Chair, with your approval, just because I know this is a workshop, so not a public comment, just in crafting that, when you're thinking about the attendance part of it, I believe state statute is clear as far as zooming in. You can do that. I mean, according to state statute, you can do that. But I would ask you to also consider executive session.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the state statute says unless the town has a different policy. And ours is detailed in a different fashion.
That executive session,
That makes sense.
are you allowed to attend an executive session via Zoom?
No,
Well, then, that, I would say you want to state that in the policy.
thank you. That's a good one, too. Yeah, I know that the lawyers can. And so, actually, we've done Zoom for certain participants as a past practice, but I think it should be clear. I think that's a good one to put in there, too, because if you're incapacitated and it's something that we need, again, 4 people, but we don't vote in executive session, so it's not the same as far as conversation.
Right.
And we have to take minutes.
You can't take minutes. And actually, there's a lot about executive session we'll be going through to figure out the best way. Even in this, it says clearly that executive session, you protect the person or the issue, but you let the public know what it's about. And we've been just reading the number, and no one knows what the number is. So I did mention to Joe that we have to make it a little bit more transparent in that it's a select board matter amongst the select board, or it's a disciplinary hearing for personnel. And that's all we have to do, or misunderstanding, or to look at personnel policy within. And so all we have to do is put a note so the public's not wondering what 30A-63-4 is, And so we're going to do it. We're going to try to make it a little better, So anyway, but the first thing I just want to touch on, we only have 10 minutes, but if you look at the first paragraph, it says that these rules, by necessity, shall be reviewed and amended from time to time as needed arises, and to meet the needs of future boards. And I think that's a very interesting line, because when you get into this thing, it clearly says that we are elected at the secret ballot, and we take office July 1st, not June 11th or June 10th. And so if we're going to continue the practice, and it must make it confusing even with salaries, if I get elected on the 10th, or Kayla and Chris gets elected on the 11th, and the select board members that are actually in office don't show up, and we have 20 things on the agenda, one, I don't think it's fair, and two, it's not even following the bylaws. So if we're going to do that, what's elected, the board changes. How do we make the agenda with the town manager reflect what the new board wants? And I'm not saying that we have to discuss it tonight. I just want to point out that it clearly says we take office July 1st, and the term is June 31st or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you go through and you start to look at what the boards have done in the past and what the policy says, and it has been amended 05, 10, June 10th, December 10th, April 5th, 11, January 13th, April 13th, May 15th, February 18th, that's in 2018, obviously, and September 19th. Those are a lot of quick changes. And there may be a lot of reasons for that. I didn't have time to go through all of them, but they are interesting when you go back and look at the annual report. And I have a hunch Peter's got all the annual reports in his library, but still, those are the things we need to look at, and we're not going to have time to go through all this tonight. So if there's anything really strong that someone picked up or striking that we might think about and twist our brains around.
Somebody has something to say down there. Can you hear them?
Yeah.
I have a suggestion, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Maybe what we should do is when we do schedule a workshop to thoroughly go through this, that we have the attorney in attendance to help us with policy and procedure on how we should be conducting our business.
I'm not opposed to that, but one of the things I'm going to really try to focus on is keeping attorney fees
Well,
down from 40
I
to
get that,
50,000. So if we went through and made changes and then have him look at them,
That may be a
and then,
compromise.
but I will tell you this, I think we're going to have an executive session with the attorney, with the 5 of us, just to go through what we can update you two on that we had an executive session a month ago.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. And I have questions about, if, for example, I had a question about hiring procedure, and I asked the chair to have Matt call me or let me call, and it doesn't happen, that's the kind of stuff I'd like to have in this policy so that no selectman doesn't have a right to have a difference of opinion and ask for an attorney.
Gets left out.
Yes. Or 3.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, I could go down through my marks, but I'm not the only one. It's just, I was told, another example, there was a emergency meeting posted on a Friday night at 9 o'clock for Monday morning or Tuesday morning. And I didn't, I was busy on the weekend. And Derek didn't get it, I didn't get it, and I think they ended up calling you, Sam, to make a 3rd vote, I'm not
They
sure.
did, which they did. Yeah.
And then I complained and said, they can text us, we have all kinds of ways to get notified, and the chair decided that emails is how we're gonna do business, and that's fair enough, but it says, make all, wherever it is, make all efforts to contact down in here. It clearly says that you don't lock into one thing and it's an email, especially if you get 320 of them dumped on me like Roadrunner did one time. So those are the things I'd like to go through, lay out and clearly say, what do you have for problems with communication? Because that's what I'm talking about in this. I'm talking about communications. And I thought I understood this pretty well.
And what you're also talking about is transparency.
Correct.
I'm also
Yeah.
sorry,
Right.
Chris,
That's
no, go
good.
ahead. That was my fault.
Oh, go ahead. I'm done.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. I'm also wondering if we can sort of lay out what constitutes a reason for an emergency meeting.
Oh, absolutely. That's on my list. And they say everything's a special meeting. There's a board meeting and a special meeting. And we were calling emergency meetings. Well, my first 2 months, I had 2 select board meetings and 3 emergency meetings. So that tells you how much we've had on that. So we can't continue to do business like that. We really have to fine tune this so that the public knows, 7 days in advance of the agenda, like Cliff just said. If it's posted, clearly he should have been able to read everything, know what's going on, and come in prepared to ask us questions. We have a lot to do this year between resilience, the school, all the things that are listed up here. And if we don't streamline this and make it more transparent and much more communicative for the participation and getting the public back here where they belong to tell us what they're thinking, it's going to be crazy. And I have to quote Sam. I dropped off the paperwork and he says, Dennis, can't we just get back to the people, doing it for the people? And I said, Sam, I'm going to quote you at the first meeting we're back. And I thought it was time. And I know from talking to both you, Chris, and Kayla, you both felt the same way. Chris, I'm going to take a moment here and just say, because it's on the record, he said, I'm in my forever home. I said, I'm in my forever home. You've got to run because forever is a long time. You need to be involved now. And he goes, okay. There's a little bit more than that, but that's exactly. And what was the other comment you made? I've always wanted to make a big difference in a community. Think about that. That's what we want. That's exactly what we want. So this work session, we had an hour. It's going to be 4 or 5 minutes. So if anyone wants to make comments on how they want to handle this, the next work session or whatever, I'd rather hear now. We'll put it on, we'll make it a motion in the next meeting, at the actual board meeting here at 6 o'clock. But I think this stuff is important, and this one in particular ought to be ironed out first. So, but it's also summer. I'm going to just put it out there, And the summer is 4 months, and 4 weeks out of the 4 months is summer. So whether we do it before the next board meeting or whether we do one in the middle, it doesn't matter to me at this stage. I just think there's a lot here when you read through it that has to be tweaked. We can bring it up to the next meeting.
I wouldn't be opposed to having workshop. It's not a
Separate and distinct?
separate and distinct workshop to work on it. I think it's important, like you said.
Sam?
I think, I like Chris' idea.
I'm fine with that.
So what we'll do is just find a time, we'll talk to Derek, and we'll set
Yeah.
one up.
Yep.
All right.
Just sit down and do it.
And we'll do a 7-day notice again, once we know what it is. We'll do a 7-day notice on the agenda on the board, the web, and the other thing I didn't realize is I just wanted to have a roundtable to get everyone's vision on why you joined, what you were thinking long-term. Same thing with Kayla. I think people know how I feel. I've been here for a year, speaking my mind, and I know from just dropping off the paperwork how you feel, getting
Yeah.
back to the people. We're going to put that on the agenda somehow with just personal vision or something, but it has to be on the agenda. We just can't talk about everything. So, anything else?
They elected us, we need to let them know what we're doing and why we're doing it.
I'm loving you more every day, Sam.
That worries me.
I just want to see you dance on your deck. Other than that, anything you'd like to add? I know you probably looked at this policy, Joe. Is there anything you saw in there that would make your job a little easier? We still have a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think that clarifying the timelines of when to, get the agenda items, when to post, I think that's key, especially as we have new staff, here in these roles and the new board. And I think once we get those ironed out and get into that rhythm, will be much easier to, again, pivot to those special meetings or emergency meetings and kind of have a blueprint of where to go. So I think this is really good to look at and hasn't been looked at for a while. So I think with a fresh set of eyes, it'll be good to kind of sit down longer and that workshop and work through them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Melody? You're the one that ended up putting the agenda together. Anything you want to add or anything that you see that you need to receive from us in order to move forward?
I just think, we'll just establish some good teamwork and we'll make a better timeline that works for everybody and we'll make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Bill,
Go ahead.
Do we need to vote?
do we vote to adjourn and move right to the next one? Because there's no.
You'll need to adjourn and give me about 2 minutes.
All right. So we'll just adjourn. It's a workshop, right?
Yeah, we make a motion?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?